So we're talking about floods, and the Western Cape has been really lashed by heavy rains, at least R1 billion worth of damage, real concern about the crops. But at the same time, climate experts are warning that this year's El Nino weather system could lead to a much hotter and drier summer later on this year. These experts have been meeting in Pretoria to share information about the impact El Nino has had in previous years and what may happen in the coming months. And to tell us more, I'm joined by Dr Neville Sweijd, Director of Access. Now, Access is the Alliance for Collaboration on Climate and Earth Systems Science. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. You know, I've got to first of all ask you about the flooding we've seen, because it is so extreme. You've been meeting your colleagues this week as part of the Extreme Climate Events Research Alliance. So if you could first just start by talking about the floods in the Western Cape. Is this part of the extreme weather patterns we're seeing, that, you know, you normally get rain in winter in those areas, but it's getting more and more extreme because of global warming? I mean, is this a sort of textbook case, or is something else at play?
Well, people have a very short-term memory for climate and for weather. This is not abnormal. It's unusual, and it hasn't occurred for a long time that we've had such heavy rains so early in the winter. So it's not unprecedented. It certainly is an extreme event in the sense that it's having the impact that you've demonstrated. But climate varies and weather varies from season to season. This is an unusually early rainfall and a lot of rainfall early in the season. So it is an extreme event, but not off the charts.
Not off the charts. All right. So you've actually been looking ahead to what El Nino could be doing in summer. Now, my understanding is that El Nino is Spanish for boy child, but it actually refers to a weather pattern which is to do with the changes in the atmosphere over the oceans. I wonder if you could just start by explaining exactly why El Nino is so important and how it impacts our weather.
Well, it's a phenomenon that occurs in the Pacific Ocean, and it occurs in different states. So sometimes we have a La Nina state, sometimes we have an El Nino state, and sometimes it's neutral. And it oscillates between these different states. And in the La Nina case, it has to do with colder water. It has to do with...
Hello, I can hear you.
You can hear me. There's some colder water that occurs on the coast of South America, and in La Nina we have much greater warming along the coast of South America, and this is what creates this global phenomenon. It has a huge impact on global circulation, mostly because it occurs on such an enormous scale. So we have been in the La Nina phase, and now we're moving into an El Nino phase of this phenomenon.
And am I right that La Nina means little girl, and it's the exact opposite of El Nino? So that means colder weather, more rain, but nothing to do with what's been happening in the Western Cape. Am I right?
Yes, well, generally speaking, in southern Africa, La Nina is associated with extra rainfall, or at least above normal rainfall. Sometimes that's extreme, and sometimes that's just a little bit of rainfall, extra rainfall. Here in this image that you are showing now, this is the impact of the last, it's an average composite chart showing the impact of the last 12 El Nino events. Mm-hmm. And here you can see where the areas which are darker in color experience more strong impacts in terms of less than average rainfall. I need to stress that this is not always the case. So generally speaking, El Ninos are associated with drier weather, and most of our extreme droughts have occurred in association with El Nino, generally in the summer rainfall areas. So that's the general pattern. Sometimes it doesn't manifest in drought, but sometimes it does.
Yeah, and we know that we live in a drought-prone country anyway. And apparently you're seeing some worrying telltale signs that we could be in for a rough period in terms of not enough rainfall. Just talk to me about what you're seeing. Yeah,
what we can say is that the El Nino is certainly developing, it's manifesting in the Pacific Ocean. And we do know, and we have seen in the past, like in 2015-16, that the impact of this is quite severe. It can be quite severe in South Africa. And so we are concerned that this El Nino, which is in fact potentially a very strong El Nino, given the fact that sea surface temperatures and ocean temperatures are really high currently. In fact, they are off the charts. Never seen before in this month sea surface temperatures in globally, in fact. So the concern is that this will be a strong El Nino. This doesn't mean that we will have a strong impact, but it is something which where there's potential for, and certainly there's a high probability of impact, and that's something we have to prepare for. This chart is showing how in 2015 the top three are November, December in 2015. The bottom are in early 2016, and there you can see the elevated temperatures above normal temperatures. So what we generally anticipate with an El Nino in the summer rainfall area in particular is hotter and drier than normal conditions. The degree of hotness and dryness still needs to be assessed.
Yeah,
but we certainly it's something we're watching carefully.
Yeah, I mean, as you just said, you're seeing sea surface temperatures that have never been this high at this particular time. Is this because of climate change, global warming?
Well, the temperatures of the oceans have been slowly increasing since they've been monitored in the last 10 years or so, seeing new records almost every year. Last year was a record, and this year is a record. So much of the heat from global warming is in fact absorbed by the oceans. So the oceans are really buffering us from that, but we are seeing unprecedented warming of the oceans globally. So that definitely is a signal from global warming. Resulting in climate change.
So it's really worrying then, because we could be in for a dry summer. As you say, it can be variable. Are we, as a country, preparing properly? I mean, we've had such a focus on water in recent weeks, but it's on our sanitation systems and our infrastructure. But within that, we've seen the blue drop and the green drop reports, and we found out how much water is actually lost. So we are wasting so much water through bad infrastructure. Are we as a country actually anywhere close to doing what we need to preserve our precious water?
Well, I can't speak specifically about water, but what I can say is that there is consciousness in our country around the idea of developing a better climate information, which is applicable not only to water but to various sectors. So the important thing to do is to really link up what's happening with our climate and our weather, and how we can use this information to prepare ourselves better for all kinds of extreme events. The El Nino, for example, we know can have an effect on some diseases, similarly with La Nina. So the relationship between weather and climate, between climate and health is something we are aware of, and that's something which we can prepare for. Similarly, if we can predict, and in certain areas of the country, we can predict better than in others what the coming seasons will be like, we can prepare better. So indeed, we have the information to do it, and it is really about various levels of government being receptive to this information and using it appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely crucial, and that's why it's so important, the work you do to monitor what is happening and the changes, and perhaps be a bit of a forewarning. Thank you so much for explaining us with such a clarity exactly what El Nino is. And as the doc said, they are seeing sea surface temperatures never higher than they're seeing right now, a direct link with the global warming and El Nino, which they are predicting could be particularly rough this year. That means hotter, drier time in summer. So we may be awash in the Western Cape, but the reality is we have to be very aware of water preservation. Thank you so much. That was Dr Neville Sweijd. He's Director of Access, which is the Alliance for Collaboration on Climate and Earth Systems.